These cheap, inexpensive, trashy paddles that's been around for a long time, evidently, there is a use for these things. Welcome back to the shop, welcome back to Open Air Outdoors. Today I'm doing some canoe paddle maintenance, and we're going to start with doing some maintenance, some repairs, and some modifications. We all have lots of paddles, at least I have a few kicking around. I'm going to talk about different types of paddles, what you can do with them, simple maintenance procedures, why I do what I do, and that includes from high-end paddles to your very inexpensive, what I would call utility paddles, shall we say, throwaway stuff, kind of stuff. And we're gonna dive right into it, and we're gonna start with the most simple of them all, which is a canoe paddle that requires a little bit of care. And this paddle here specifically has no finish on it, no varnish or anything, right? It is all natural wood, but it requires oiling, and I have some special oil that goes with it. A few drips and drops like that. I have a dedicated rag I keep in a Ziploc baggie, and I simply give it a little wipe, spread that oil around, and right now I'm actually being a little bit generous because this is a new paddle, and the wood is still soaking up the oil quite well. It's not completely impregnated with oil yet.
The Canadian Red Cross is looking for 25 volunteer drivers in Sudbury. Our drivers give seniors with no other means access to essential services like dialysis,
Just like that.
We know this is difficult.
Just like that. Now I have this paddle here. This is more typical, right? And what I have going on here is a paddle that is wrapped. Hockey tape, eh? But this paddle is made out of cedar. Cedar is very soft wood, and if you look at that and you see the varnish has worn off the tip, to be expected. A well-used paddle will have a worn tip. And I mean, you're pushing off from the banks and this kind of stuff, planting it in the muck, in the sand, in the bottom, pushing yourself away from beaver dams, whatnot, you get damage. So I'm going to take some Varathane. Right, this is about as easy as it gets versus cracking open a can and paintbrush and all that. This is spray on Varathane, and once I'm done sanding it down and reprofiling the tip, I'm just going to give it a quick shot, and I'm going to do it throughout the day today because I'm going to be in the shop all day today. I'm going to probably shoot it 4 or 5 times and get enough of a coating here to protect it, continue having this paddle protected properly. But let's address the hockey tape. Now, if you're wondering why are you even using hockey tape on your paddle, I will explain that, and I will show you once I get this old hockey tape off. There we go. Because this is a cedar paddle, and I mostly Canadian stroke. So what happens is the paddle is getting damaged. right in the point where I pry on the gunnel. And that's why I put the tape on. It's not to have a good grip like you would on a hockey stick. So what happens with the paddle as I do my Canadian stroke, right? So I go down, I turn, and I do a little pry on the gunnel to correct the bow. So what happens with that is, right at the point on the shaft that I pry on the gunnel, because it's a cedar paddle, the paddle was getting damaged and it was cracking the varnish a little bit, and so I thought, well, I'll just put some tape on there to protect it from doing that. That's all, simply. And after I tried that, I found that it actually is quite comfortable on the hand. Hockey tape is sticky, like always sticky. So when I'm paddling, I found that I hardly have to hold on to the paddle here. I basically just pull, and just the tension of my fingers, my hand is always there. I don't have to really grip it. So let's go, I'm gonna go and get some goo remover. I'm gonna clean this up. I'm gonna wipe the whole paddle down, give it a light sanding, and retape it and varnish it. Goo gone, it works good. A little bit of that on a paper towel. Okay, while we're at it, let's get some sandpaper and start sanding the tip of that paddle. Feels nice and smooth, and what I've done is I sanded down about 4 inches of the tip very lightly, so that's ready for the lacquer. So let's rewrap the shaft and then spray the lacquer on the tip. I heard that some people on a long day of paddle will develop blisters. And obviously that's from the friction against the lacquered finish of the paddle. And I would say probably, if you were to do this here, wrap your canoe paddle shaft, if you're one of those people that do get blisters, this certainly would help you. Might be worth it for you to try. I find it quite comfortable. It's a little bit sticky, especially in the hot, blazing summer sun, but it's nothing really to complain about. Okay, that's it for the lacquer. Now I'm going to let this sit, let it get tacky. I'm going to shoot it a few more times before the day is over, while I work on another paddle, which we're going to talk about next. Okay, the next thing on the menu of paddles is this crappy looking thing. I mean, doesn't get much trashier than that, right? But guess what? These cheap, inexpensive, trashy paddles that's been around for a long time, evidently, there is a use for these things. And when you're out paddling, I don't do this very often, but if you go on an extended trip, it's a good idea to bring a second paddle. And a trashy paddle is a good way to do that, because if you're pushing away from the bank or you're stuck on the beaver dam, whatever, it's nice to have an inexpensive prying tool, something you can dig into the bank and you don't care what happens to it. If you break it, so be it, it's broken. If you don't break it and you happen to break your primary paddle, you got a backup. Inexpensive as it is, ugly as it is, it's going to paddle you back home. But today I'm going to modify this paddle. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because last year, some of you saw the video. I have a video called Nabaquazi and the Kid, where I took my grandson on his first canoe trip. And I gave him this trashy paddle. I'm going to modify this paddle and clean it up for him. And what I mean by that is I'm going to reduce the size of the blade. Because basically, if you put your paddle down, let me readjust you a little bit. So if you take your paddle, plunge your paddle in the water, on your pull, if your paddle does a little squiggly thing when you're pulling, chances are you're not physically strong enough for the amount of volume that paddle is capturing when you're pulling. And for an 11-year-old kid, that's exactly what was happening. So I'm going to reduce the width of the blade. I'm going to round off the end to reduce the splash, right? Be better for him, better for me, because when he flips it up, I'm doing against the water, right? So I'm going to reduce that, and perhaps even narrow out the throat area to reduce the weight, so the kid could paddle easier. So it'll be easier for him to handle in the sense that the overall weight will be reduced, and easier for him to paddle in the sense that when he draws through the water, the paddle will move through the water better for him. He's not going to be like a guy first time at the gym trying to lift the power weights, right? So let's do some layout and start modifying. Okay, before we get started, I just want to point out, when the varnish and the finish is gone and the wood discolors, shortly thereafter you will get a crack. And here is a good example of what's going on with that. So there's a crack right there. Goes all the way to here. I don't know if the camera's picking it up okay, but I'll do my best. And there's another crack here, goes all the way to there. And then if I roll the paddle over, you can clearly see the big crack there. So that's what happens when your paddle is no longer protected by its final finish. So we're now going to we have ourselves a paddle that is approximately 6 inches. I'm thinking we're going to bring it down to 4. That will automatically eliminate this blowout here. And then I'm going to cut the tip off however long I need. Looks like I'll be going probably about 2 inches. And then we're going to profile a circular end and sand everything down. The whole thing's going to get resanded. And if we see any other blemishes that need to be addressed, well, we certainly will address it. like a kid's paddle. Let's give it some color. Well, there we have it, guys. I have a newly built, modified paddle ready for 11, 12-year-old kid. I think he'll like it. And if the paddle breaks, so be it. So we've done paddle maintenance, paddle repairs, paddle modification. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Catch you on the next one.